Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We got a very special guest today, Miami native artist, Cuban, Alexander Mijares. How's it going, buddy?
Good, good. And yourself?
I'm living the dream. Is that one of your pieces behind you there?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's jump right in. Tell me a little bit about your background, about yourself, how you got to where you are today, and then we'll carry on from there.
So I was born and raised in Miami. My family's from Cuba and Spain. I thought I wanted to be an attorney, and then I realized that I had trouble finishing a magazine, so that probably wasn't the best field for me. And ended up doing like a business minor, like got my MBA, and then during MBA class I started doodling in my books. And when I ended up moving into an apartment, I basically had enough to get an apartment and furnish it with a few pieces. And I realized I had no art or any money left for art. So I ended up going to the store, buying a canvas, throwing it out on the floor, and doing my first piece. And within 2 to 3 months, I had a style that was kind of recognizably mine. And within 6 months, I did my first show. We had like 1,800 RSVPs in 24 hours, sold out the show, and the rest is history. And that was back in end of 2011 into 2012.
So you got a good decade under your belt now. That's a long time.
Yeah. It was cool because, I started off doing paintings. Then I got into learning how to do kind of like murals and street art. And then I started asking myself, what would it look like if I could walk behind my painting? And that opened up a whole avenue of doing sculptures. And then I got into doing bronze sculptures, metal sculptures. And now I travel around the world doing paintings, murals, sculptures for, underprivileged children to high-end homes all over the world.
So you said you thought to yourself, what would it look like if I could walk behind my painting? Do you mean you started thinking three-dimensionally?
Yeah, because, when you look at a painting, I guess you see it in 2D. And I always thought, like, okay, if I painted a woman, and I painted, you'd see the front side, what does the back side look like?
Right, yeah.
Or if I painted, some just like an abstract-looking boat, what would it look like on the other side? And the only way to do that is to go three-dimensional.
It's interesting. What do you find you've got a particular style, but where do you find your inspiration for that? Is it nature or something else?
So I travel a lot, and when I used to travel a lot, specifically as a kid, I would always every time we would go anywhere, let's say, for instance, Spain or Italy, I always loved finding what would be like the main like church or small little churches in the place. And the reason being is that I loved seeing how you would have these structures that were so intense and done so many years ago. And then you have these like just little pockets of either massive stained glass or these little, windows where this light would come in and you would see all these colors on the floor. And as the clouds would move, it almost would make the stained glass feel like it was moving. And so I was always fascinated by the fact that you could take so many little shapes, and then when you step back, if you're close up, you see a bunch of little shapes, and as you step back, you see kind of the big picture. And so I kind of brought that into my work, where I loved the movements of people who would do quick graffiti or like street art, so high movement stuff. And then I love the colors and shapes of stained glass that, with the right lighting, felt like the piece was kind of coming to life. And I took it one step further and basically said, like, everybody has their life journals, whether you write them down or you have them in your head. And I feel like a lot of my pieces are several stories, several pieces brought into that. When you look close, I might tell you some little pieces, a certain story, but when you look back, you get the whole picture as to, man, wow, okay, that's why Alex is the way he is, or that's why he did this, or because it wasn't just one scene, it was multiple stories or multiple inspirations or things that happened in his life that triggered this piece. So when you look up close, you see those stories, but when you get back, you see the overall picture.
Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of I know a lot of artists who do collections but they're more anthology collections, which is to say they're not necessarily associated with each other. It's just like I had an idea,
Yeah,
and here's a spectrum of things I thought about it. But this, you're talking more about multiple pieces that tell one story, which is a different kind of
yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah, and then the thing is that like I've tried to do like the collection, so I've done like a series of I did like these I did this ballerina sculpture,
Mm,
for example, and then I did a bunch of dancers that was inspired. My mom was a ballerina for 20 something years, and there's a lot of stories behind that, good and bad, etc. And it kind of inspired a collection. But every time I try to do a collection of more than one piece or two, my ADD kicks in and I'm like, all right, I did the first one. And like the other day, I was like, I'm gonna do a series of cars,
mm,
because Formula One's coming. Let's get into that. So I did one car, and it like sold right away. And then I was like, man, like that guy wanted his piece right away, so I couldn't even do the like, show them all together. And then I did the second one. Then I was like, oh look, I'm gonna go do something else. And then I sometimes I'll come back, but to me, it's hard for me to do like a lot of people do that. They do a collection that way. It's one thought. You just kind of
mm.
do it a bunch of ways. Sometimes I'm feeling that, and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I get hit like a freight train with something else, and it detours me completely, and it takes me down that rabbit hole for maybe a couple weeks to a couple months, and then so it's hard for me to do that. So I like to just kind of be like, here's my journal entry. Boom, let's do a painting. Let's just do that, and they all happen to feel like the same fingerprint, as far as they all look like mine, whether I go real extreme or I stay with something that's kind of recognizably mine. When you see them all together, you could definitely tell it was all done by the same person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's certain people that I follow. You're one of them that have such a specific style that if I saw one of their pieces out in the wild, I would immediately know it was them. Like Louis Carrion, for example. If
Yeah.
I saw one of his pieces, I would immediately because it's very specific what he does, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everything's a little different, but the style is very specific. I enjoy your stuff. It's very good. And you
Thank you.
um tell me about so you grew up in Miami, but your which one of your parents is from Cuba?
So my mother was from Cuba.
Mm,
She left Cuba because of the revolution.
mm,
They were forced to get out. Held at gunpoint, all that good stuff. They my cousin was shot and killed. There's just there was, I mean, sorry, her cousin. But there was just they had to go, and they had their land taken from them, all their jewelry, everything, and it was just a matter of either basically be killed or leave kind of
mm.
thing. And they grabbed their stuff and they left. Luckily, they were able to get a flight out. They didn't have to go by raft. Um, and that was one of the reasons why my mom was super pissed off when I told her I was going to Cuba, because I went a few years ago because again I wanted to see, you can't really know where you're going if you haven't know where you've been. Like I wanted to know where my family had kind of come from, and where, even though I used an open mind, I was able to see that the city was in shambles, and I didn't stay in the bougie hotels that everyone leaves there. They're like, oh, Cuba's beautiful. No, no, no. Like I stayed in a hostel, like an Airbnb kind of thing, but like in the city that belonged to a local person. I went and saw my family, but yeah, that country is destroyed, like completely destroyed.
Yeah, it's
Crazy. Also, oh, go ahead.
communism's not exactly great. I think we've
No,
proved the last 100 years has kind of proved that. But yeah,
yeah,
first generation Cuban Americans are so patriotic, and so they just have this no, like there's a sense of pride with European Americans who have been here for a very long time, maybe some of their families since the beginning of this country. There's a pride
Mhm.
there because of our system of government and the way we've done things. But the first generation Cuban Americans, like the people your parents' age, for example, your mother's age, are some of the more patriotic people that I've run into, because it's one thing to be proud of where you came from and where you are. It's another thing entirely to really appreciate it, because you've seen the other side of the
Yeah,
fence.
yeah, of course. No, I definitely see that here, and those were the guys that came here with their whole families, either if they were able to get an airplane, or they sent their family and worked over there to raise more money to bring them back, or they went on rafts. Like you gotta, it's gotta be pretty bad to send women and children and babies on floats with no motor or like rigged up diesel engines in a boat made of entirely of steel drums. Like that tells you something. But what's crazy is those were the type of people that came here. My grandfather, that generation, and
Mm.
my mom, where they came here and they were the American dream. They came here and they worked their ass off to basically provide for their families and whatnot. And the problem is that now you have a lot of the Cuban people that are coming here, which the terminology is hecho por Fidel, basically means that they were created by Fidel Castro and his regime. So they come here and they don't want to do anything. They're lazy. They want to live off other people, and it's just like a whole different animal, whole different species of Cuban people now that are the ones that are coming now because they've been so brainwashed.
Mm.
I went there and I worked with one of the orphanages over there, and we've donated a ton of art supplies. They found out and they try to basically chase us out of the country. But while you're there in those schools, you got, Che Guevara, you got Fidel Castro. Their posters are everywhere. Like if
Mm.
someone would put like a Michael Jordan poster, they're worshipped over there. And so they instill this mind mentality that, you know, you basically everyone is equal in this, and you all basically are just part of the government. It's a disaster what's going on over there.
Yeah, it's interesting because that probably was Cuba's got a very rich, deep history, right? It's a very proud people, just like a lot of Latin American countries. And once the revolution started to happen, the identities of individuals started to get stripped away, in the way that you're talking about. And it's a thing that's happened in a lot of authoritarian regimes over the years. But people who have felt like an individual, who I mean, that's the beauty of the place. You walk, you go into any neighborhood 60 or 70 years ago over there, and it's the same but different. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and the people are good. I mean, I don't know from the audience's perspective if you've been to places similar to that, like the Dominican and Puerto Rico and stuff like that.
Yep.
Same but different. But the people are always very welcoming. It's not like they don't nobody ever makes you feel like an outsider in that way in those kind of cultures. And then all of a sudden, and that's the beauty of it. That's also the resilience of it, because that's such a deeply rooted sense of pride that actually has some substance to it. And then you start stripping away all of the individuality from people. You know what I mean? And say, hey, you're Cuban, which means Cuba isn't the people and the culture, it's the state, right?
Yeah.
That's
No, no,
uh
no.
that's not great.
You know, yeah, it's crazy too. Is that Cuba actually was seen back in like the 40s and 50s as like that was the place to be. That's where casinos
Mm.
started. That was like the fashion capital. Everyone dressed to the nines. So it's like when you hear and you read all that backstory, and you're like, man, like that would have been so cool to see. And now you go there and you have these buildings that from a mile away they look beautiful, but you look inside the window and it's all deteriorated. It's
Mm.
all falling down. It's rubble. It's a disaster what's going on over there. And I thought in my lifetime that I would get to see, or at a younger age, I would get to see it be rebuilt and repaired, and the U.S. maybe came to the rescue over there and kind of helped it, because so many times we've been so close with it,
Mm.
and then it just boom, and it feels like we took one step forward and then took 50 steps back over there.
Yeah, and you say you mentioned the phrase, I can't recall exactly what it was, but something to the effect of Castro created people. And
Hecho por Fidel.
okay, and
Yeah.
what is that like for you as somebody who's like you grew up in a very different world than they did, obviously, but
Yeah.
you grew up with a certain vision of what Cuba is or could be versus what they do, and how does that conversation go between the two of you?
Well, yeah, like my grandfather and my mom, they all have pictures and stories of how they grew up over there. So yeah, I was always told about all the beauty and the great things that happened, or how it was, and then what forced them to get out of the country in the fastest shape possible. I mean, I have stories of my mother was telling me where they ran into my grandparents' house and they were forced to basically stuff all their jewelry inside of their panties. So like they wouldn't just take all their stuff and wedding rings and then they would put these guys in a line and shoot them in the head, like, so I have all these stories that was told to me, but like, yeah, I was never indoctrinated into, like, yeah, let's go with the whole socialist communism type of thing. So when I went to Cuba and I talked to them, everyone is super nice and no one really, like, they've been so used to that lifestyle of always just living that way. They didn't know, because they're, let's say they were my age, they didn't know what it was before,
Mm.
and they don't know what it is after. They just know what it is now. And you talk to them and they're like, yeah, like, no big deal. This is cool. Everything is great. Like, they actually hype it up. Like, this is the best place because that's all they ever knew. So when I talk to people like that, yeah, it's definitely different. But when you tell, one of the older generations like my parents or their parents, hey, let's go to Cuba, all of them get super pissed off because in their heads it's, you're spending money over there and supporting a government that basically killed tons of people's family
Mm.
and forced people to jump on inflatable tubes and come across the ocean.
Yeah, it's interesting that people like your mother and grandfather probably, well, not probably, they definitely at the time before the revolution had a deep sense of pride of what Cuba was, right? I mean,
Yeah, of course.
and they carried that with them when they came here, which is one of the things that makes Miami great, by the way, is just having that pocket of culture there. But um, then they had to escape because of the revolution. But people who are there now, as bad as it is with buildings deteriorating and the economy sucks and civil liberties are not not exactly a thing, they blindly support the authoritarian regime. I wonder what that is. Is it just, especially once they come here to the States, right? You're no longer I guess, under the yoke of all that bullshit. But still, is it like Stockholm syndrome or what is that?
I think it's still it's so ingrained in your head that that since a child you've been taught to think a certain way. It's very hard for them to think otherwise, and that's why a lot of people use that phrase I was telling you,
Mm.
because it's just a whole different way of thinking. It's not like, I was telling you, a lot of these Cubans when they first came, they came here, they opened up businesses. Like half of my dad's friends, they never even went to college. They all came from Cuba, stay here, and they're all, have Fortune 500 companies, like billion-dollar companies, like, and they chase that American dream. A lot of them come, the other ones come here now. They want everything to be handed out to them. They want, those are the ones voting that, the rich should pay more in taxes so they can live a free life, that they don't have to do anything. It's just an entirely different way of thinking, and it's upsetting because it almost gives Cubans a bad name, even though they were born and raised in Cuba, but they've just been so, like, I guess, I don't know if the word is indoctrinated, but they've just been so brainwashed, just like, like these guys that walk around with the bombs and they blow themselves up, like,
Mm.
they've just been put in their head over and over and over, like, Americans are bad, or like, whatever it is, and don't support that and go over there and try to get more people to think like we do. It's just, yeah, it's weird to even comprehend it or even talk with them.
So you think that's something that the Cuban government, Bermuda, is intent on, is sending people who believe what he believes from Cuba to America to try to what infiltrate the, because that, I mean, that I understand why somebody might do that, but that's not gonna fucking work. Like these,
I don't think they're.
your family and the offspring like you that came from those families, there's no way they're gonna be able to convince you that Cuba's is somehow good. You know what I mean? That's just not gonna
Yeah, yeah,
happen.
yeah. I think I don't know if it's so much that he's sending people here, because his whole thing is to keep everyone trapped there. That's
Mm,
the reason. The reason why they basically, you got to get on a raft to get out of there,
sure.
or buy your way out of it by spending tens of thousands of dollars to pay the government so you can buy a lottery ticket to get yourself out. So most of the people, they do that are here, they want to get out. They don't like that lifestyle, or they've had family that's been there that has kind of taught them, hey, this is how it was, this is what's going on, and some of them can kind of see through the BS. But there's a lot of people there that their families never, let's say, never left the U.S., that they're so brainwashed into that way of thinking. But by the time they get here, yeah, I feel like the ones that are here, they wanted to get out because they want to escape communism. But they're, I feel like they're their mentality as far as like come here for the American dream is not like it was, for people who came 30 to 40 years ago. They come here and it's the way they would, like, let's say working over there, they try to do that here, and it's almost like a kind of like lazy in a sense. But it's just not the same blood. But in reality, you have the kind of same thing going on here with a lot of, I guess I don't know if I'm in that category, but in a lot of the millennials these days here don't want to work. They want everything handed to them. And if they work, a little bit and it's hard, they give up. So I feel like that whole also work ethic, maybe it's not just a Cuba thing, maybe it's just across the board, but in the last 20 to 15, 20 years, there's a lot of that younger generation that wants everything handed to them. They don't want to pay for school. They don't want to pay for this. They don't want a job. They don't want, their responsibilities. And I feel like we're heading that way. And unless parents start to kind of change that in either both Cuba and here, it's not going to look good for the next few years.
Yeah, it's very bizarre to me to see. I mean, maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, before the internet was widely popular and social media and stuff like that, for somebody to, for like a white Pacific Northwesterner to openly pine for things like socialism and communism, you know what I mean? When you can just go out, you can go literally ask people who have lived under that shit and ask them how it worked out for them, you know what I mean? But that's all very bizarre to me that we've not. And look, like you said, maybe it's just the effect of the turning generations and stuff. We got too comfortable or something. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, really. I mean, it's so bizarre to me because there seems to be this disconnect between effort and expectation. You know what I mean? Like we don't see, and you see it in all facets of life: diet, education, fitness, business, whatever, life in general. But it is very bizarre to me that there are literally people that are who have just escaped that shit, who are coming here to tell you, like, please don't do that here. And then people are, it's just like it's a weird level of ignorant arrogance.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's why I hear some of the stuff that goes on today, like, and I look at social media and because the thing is, 99% of my business is all through social media. So I'm on it a lot because I need to either promote my art. Like, to me, my social media platform, I use it as a thing to promote helping others in need. I use it as a way to, grow my business and sell art, and, just to show a little bit of my lifestyle. That way people can kind of feel like they get to know who the artist is. And, but man, sometimes I go down the rabbit hole of looking at some stuff and I'm just like, how did we get here? How did we get to this place? Like, if you, especially like in Miami, you see it because you have, like I said, you have all these people that, left Cuba because of this type of thing that they're trying to do here. And it's like, how can that be put in your head and how people think like that? I mean, look at all this stuff going on right now, for example, with like the whole Budweiser thing. Like, how did we get here? like, it's like, wow, man. Like, and for me, like, I have a 2-year-old, or turns 2 this week. I'm thinking to myself, like, how am I going to raise this kid to not be shoved this stuff down in his throat in school or do anything, like, and I feel like it's getting easier because there's so many parents out there, let's say, that have kids, they're obsessed with work, and then when they're not working, they're on their phones or, not paying attention to their kids. Their kids are being raised by nannies, and those nannies come from countries that a lot of them, they think like, hey, socialism and all this stuff is great, and it's sad. I go to the park every single day with my son. I make it a point to leave work and I take him for at least 2 to 3 hours, take him to the park, outside, no phones, nothing, no iPads, just scratch your knees on the floor, get dirty, play. And I see these other kids that it's the same kids every day at the park. Their parents are nowhere to be found. Their nannies are there on their phones, talking to who knows from their country. Like, and it's just like, listen, I have nannies. That's great, but you have to be there raising your kid. You have to, like, I get there and I tell them I'm teaching my son, hey, listen, share with this kid,
Mm.
of all races, like, do this, like, play here, like, and you see these other kids, like, they're being raised by someone who doesn't care about telling them do this, share, be a kind person, like, and you can see that it's an entirely different way of parenting these days, and I think that's where things are going wrong. Parents are, I think, less involved in their kids' life now and more involved in showing a lifestyle on social media of a perfect life, and then the ones that who are, I guess, focused on really raising their kids, it's like frowned upon, like, oh, you don't give your kids an iPad, you don't do this, like,
Mm.
it's just like a whole. I don't know where we got off the tracks, and because and even with the whole race thing, like I mean, I live in Florida, or I call it Miami. Miami to me is a different state than
Yeah,
Florida.
yeah,
And I don't remember ever I mean, places like Alabama, okay, I get it, but I don't remember places like here having so many issues with race and all the stuff that's been going on. So, like, I try to grasp what's going on with, the socialism and the communism of Cuba with what's going on here in the U.S. and all the, and it's insane because I can't even figure it out for myself, or how I'm going to teach or protect my son's mind from this kind of stuff, because it's gotten crazy.
yeah. It's certainly gone completely off the deep end, especially with kids. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I do from a if you want to consider it this way, from a marketing perspective, the earlier you can get inside somebody's head, the more effective your message is going to be, whether it's
Yeah.
legitimate or not. Which is that shows how nefarious the message is, frankly, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's raising children. People using electronics to raise children seems. It seemed at the time. I mean, I think our generation to some degree suffered from the latchkey syndrome, which is like both parents are working, so we're at home by ourselves a lot,
Yeah.
and our interaction with other human beings is unmonitored and unsupervised, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not, right? But we it was bifurcated. Like, we did become a little bit selfish because of it, but we also learned to be a little more self-reliant than this current generation is.
Hmm.
But now it's like the need for constant stimulus, electronic
Yeah.
stimulus especially, has really warped our brains in a bad way, because not only do we require that constant electronic stimulus, but that's also how we project to the world now. We think we have to provide constant electronic stimulus as well, as you said about just, posting on social media and letting everybody in the world know what we're up to and shit. No, why? Why do people need to know what you're up to, dude? Just go fucking do stuff. Go outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is interesting for somebody who works in media like myself to say, but this is what I do for a living. You know what I mean? I wouldn't recommend this shit drains the life out of you. I would not recommend living if I didn't do this particular kind of work. Before I did this, I did not fuck around on social media very much,
Yeah.
because it just I didn't see the value in it, to be honest. But now it is when you have that dichotomy where you are both consuming a lot of electronic information and then feeling like you need to posture in the electronic mediums, it changes the way your fucking brain works. It changes your values. Actually, it changes what you find
Yeah.
important, and I think that's really problematic, especially with children. Like, we've got to do a better job of this stuff.
No, I agree. But yeah, back to what you were saying, like, yeah, I tell my dad all the time, I was like, if I wasn't selling or using art as, I mean, social media as my platform to be like my global gallery, I'd probably never be on it, just because I do notice that when I do turn off my phone or spend time with my son, where it's 2 to 3 hours of no cell phone, just me and him, I feel like I'm in a better place. I'm in a happier place. But then I also feel like kind of God gave me this a voice now as
Mm.
an artist to, not only just, yeah, sell art. That's great, but I use my power to help others and also create awareness and whatnot. So I'm sure, like, yeah, you probably weren't on social media before, but then your podcast probably grew where now it's like your responsibility is to be here and be yourself up so you can actually educate others as to, what the heck's going on. And if it's just maybe one person a week or one person a month, it's one more person that, is kind of being brought back to the olden days of thinking, which was get outside, get on your bike, get off the damn screens and live your life and not be controlled, not be told what to think. And it's crazy. So it's great that you're doing something like this as well.
Yeah, I mean it's all right. I do enjoy the part where I get to interact with other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we do a lot of live events and stuff like that, and being able to, and we have people stop by the studio a lot as well, and hearing from
Mm-hmm.
people that it's useful for them is the only reason I continue doing it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's like I'm just trying to think of, because it wasn't like this when I was a kid, but I'm trying to think of how the how your brain develops, how your social skills develop if you're so addicted to constant stimulus like that. You know what I mean? Like there's no time to pause and think about what you're doing, to think about what you're saying, to think about how you might react. You know what I mean? You just
Yeah.
have to. Social media has turned everybody into a hot take machine. Like everybody's got hot takes on everything. It's like, oh, here's what I think. Like, okay, do you really think that, or did you read it somewhere and you're just posting it now? You know what I mean? And it's
You, you,
from your
but
perspective as a creative guy, that's got to suck, dude. I mean, it's one thing to get inspiration from stuff, and I think that's very valuable. But when you're inundated with stimulus like that all the time, most people don't turn that into creativity. They just parrot what they're seeing, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I've had to kind of distance myself sometimes, yeah, because sometimes I get a little bit overstimulated trying to, just handle my business side of what's going on there because I these algorithms are shoving all this stuff in my face. But yeah, it's that's why one of the biggest things is when I travel, I try to like not really have my phone on or like with me is because I get more inspiration off actually talking with people, going and seeing places, not, just looking at everything online. Some of my best work has been where I've just been at a dinner table and I've just been talking with someone and, we kind of spitballing ideas, phones are off and, it triggers these ideas and then I got to rush home and figure out a way to create it. But there is it's positives and negatives. There's some positive, which is great because, throughout the day now I can see artists work from all around the world
Mm.
because since I'm in the art field and that's what I look at, it kind of pushes me. So it's cool that I get to share the space with other creatives as well. And that's actually led to some collaborations in the past. So there are benefits if you know how to weed through it and actually use it for something like an inspiration or to meet and link with others. But yeah, the harmful one is where, you're taking selfies all day long and it's all about you, and how you can, or what you think people actually really want to hear about you. And, if a lot of these people who have these massive followings actually use their platform to promote actually good stuff as opposed to this is what I eat in a day, I feel like it would be a lot more beneficial to people, to their followers,
Yeah, for sure. And it's we saw an example of this just mindless nonsense the other day. That I don't know if you caught it on social media, but some dummy went on a tour of Auschwitz and was sitting on the train tracks, and taking selfies of herself and shit. It's like, or I'm sorry, somebody was, yeah, her boyfriend was taking pictures of her like posed in some Instagram thought pose or whatever the fuck.
Yeah,
It's like, a lot of people died here, right? Like this isn't for your vanity, you stupid bitch.
yeah,
I don't like that. People's brains are completely fucking warped right now. But again, I think it is, when I think about from the perspective of the brain developing over time and your social skills and what you value as a human being. I think that stuff really messes you up. Like turning,
yeah,
it's like the word love, for example. You got an almost 2-year-old to be 2 this week. So I love you is one of the first phrases that a child learns because their parents just say it to them all the time. But they don't
mhm,
have any academic understanding of what love is, what the word means. All they
mhm,
know is that's a phrase that you and I exchange between each other, and it means to
mhm,
them, to the child, I love you means whatever your behavior towards them is, right? So
mhm,
if your behavior towards them is to hand them an iPad and fuck off, right? Or ignore them, or to be cruel to them, or if you're a rude person, or if you're a prejudiced person or something like that. That's how they come to understand love when they are 6, 7, 8 years old, then a teenager, when they start to understand things, and that stays with them for their entire lives. This concept
Yeah.
of love, what it means to be loved, comes from the first 2 or 3 years of a child's life, and what the parent does to show them, not tell them, but what they do to show them what love is.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have an entire generation who have been raised not as latchkey, but with constant stimulus from who knows what source, right? I mean, it could be good or bad in a lot of these cases. And I really think it's fucked the way people's brains work. Like, they don't, do you routinely see people like hold the door for each other, or see garbage on the ground and reach over and pick it up because they care about what's going on around them? No, they just like, we're in the era of self-care. You know what I mean? Where everybody's concerned about taking care of themselves. And I'm not saying you should ignore yourself and walk around like Siddhartha Gautama in dirty clothes and shit like that to prove a point. But you should probably care about the people around you. And we're not teaching people to care about the people around them anymore. So it's no surprise why they would, get lured in by the state, by authoritarian leaders and shit like that.
Yeah, there's actually a quote I have on my body. It says, if serving is beneath you, then leadership is beyond you. And that's one of the things that, like in all my businesses and whatnot, one of the things, for example, I have a metal business when I'm not doing the art stuff. And, we got 60 something employees here, and it's like a factory style, burgers and whatnot. And, when I first started working there, in order to kind of gain their respect, I could have just been there, suit and tie, and been like, do this, do this, do this. But I realized that, that doesn't go very far. So the first thing I did when I was kind of first day kind of out doing my stuff is I started mopping all the floors and sweeping all the floors and picking up all on my hands and knees. I had blood coming down, blisters all over my hands from picking up metal and cleaning. And I did that for a period of about 3 to 4 weeks until the first person came up to me and grabbed the broom from my hand and said, hey, let me help you. And then I realized that me and him were on the same level. We were good to go. But I had to bring myself off this pedestal that, a lot of people are on, to get down to the level of normal human beings when you're doing this kind of stuff. And then I kept doing it in another department. And then that guy started helping, and that guy. Before you knew it, all 60 something people were like, no, Alex, I got it. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. But, I think that kind of goes along with also what's kind of going on, in this society too, is a lot of people think that they're too good to do certain things, or too good for certain jobs, or they step all over people because they think that, hey, you know what, I have fucking 1 million followers, let me treat you like a pile of shit because what? You haven't really accomplished anything but post pictures of yourself. So, it's a shame that there's a lot of people out there that could be doing really good stuff for this planet, for people, for society, and instead they use their platforms to just do complete opposite. And I think that a lot of them need to be brought down and need to get to that level, like you're saying, where if someone falls, you pick them up. If someone's walking behind you, you keep that door open. The old school manners that everyone was taught as a kid. Now you got kids watching TV shows where I saw the other day, it was like on YouTube, it was a kid, we were watching Cocomelon, and then the show ended, it went to another one, and it was these two fucking dinosaurs talking about how there were two boy dinosaurs on how they wanted to have a baby. And it was just like, this is a show for 2 and 3 year olds. Like, I'm sorry, but you know what? The problem is that while the parents are on their phone eating shit in the background, these shows are playing just boom, 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 boom. It's wild.
We fell asleep at the wheel. That's what happened.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
you know what's crazy is
ahead.
that I noticed this the other day. There's certain kids that I see, and I'm bringing this up a lot because I've been really into this space now with my son and giving him the best life I can give him, but I also don't want him to be a robot. And so that's why I keep bringing these kind of things up. But I noticed that my son, who has been raised with basically no TV, no phone, no iPads, nothing, I noticed that he's more advanced in sports. He's more advanced in motor skills, so in discussion. He walks up to anyone, says hello, ¿cómo estás? Talks in Spanish, like knows two languages. And the kids that I see that live on computer screens, they get to the park and they're like huddled next to like the nanny's leg, or like my son will come up to him and be like, "Hey, high five," and they stare at them like with this blank stare of like, it's almost like if the kid doesn't have anyone to interact to, he doesn't have
Mm.
anyone to talk to. Or, they might get a parent who wakes up and says, "Hey, good morning. I love you. I'm off to work. I'm out all day long." And then they come back to, "Hey, I love you. Good night." So their social skills are just out the door,
Mm.
because all they do is listen, 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 listen. And then these days, with the way people treat each other and the way they talk and the yelling, it's like they disrespect. So like these kids are like, they're growing up in broken homes, but they're not broken homes.
Right.
Like I feel
Mm.
like that's what's going on, and it's insane. So me and my wife made a pact that message comes in on our phone, if it's kind of during working hours or it's important, we walk away from where our son is to answer the message, put the phone back when we come in, so he doesn't see us. Because for almost 2 weeks, I saw my son walking around like this with a plastic toy, hello, like mimicking me, because I was taking a lot of calls for some jobs I was doing, and I realized this kid's watching me glued to my phone doing certain things. So I made it a point to stop, and the moment I stopped doing that and stopped putting TV, he started eating dinner without TV. He started playing with his toys, playing with the basketball, the baseball, and not picking up objects and pretending like they were cell phones. And so it's still it's crazy how they're like sponges, but you can reprogram them very quickly
Mm.
as long as it's not too deep into their life.
Yeah, and
But
it's the reality of what you're saying is that that shit doesn't end when they graduate high school either. Like when I was in the military, I'm in my mid 20s and I'm training dudes who are 17 to 19 years old who have never been away from their families before, and all of a sudden they've got money and alcohol and guns. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's like toddlers but with booze and guns essentially.
yeah,
And people who respect you will do what you do. They will listen to what you say, but ultimately they're going to do exactly what you do. And it's
yeah,
that's the essence of leadership. Children especially are going to follow you where you go. And you know what you said about service is one thing that I really hit on a lot in this show. I mean, it's um, a number of the principles that we operate by are things like promoting equality of opportunity, to hold people accountable, but to do something every day to help your country, your countrymen, or all men. That's one of them, right? Like
yeah,
you can do these things, and everything. The reality of life is that every important thing you ever do will be in the service of other people. You know what I mean?
hmm,
Like you're not going to do anything important for yourself. That's just not how life works. And
yeah,
look at the people who live that way, and look at how unhappy and nihilistic they are. Um, Leadership is not about what you can do for yourself. It's about what you can do for other people. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
we seem to have lost that trait. There's I don't remember who wrote this. I read it a long time ago. It's from the 70s. It's called "The Servant as a Leader." That's the name of the article. I can't remember who the guy's name, but I think that might be where the quote you have on your body came from originally. I think it's from his work,
hmm,
if I'm not mistaken.
maybe.
Um, and it's like 29 pages, I think, if I remember correctly. 29 pages of just talking about how, like, people think of a leader as somebody who tells other people what to do, but that's not what it is. A leader is
No.
somebody who has either the resources or the power or the capability or whatever trait they have. They have the ability to influence and assist other people. That's what it really is, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great responsibility to have. And nowhere is it a larger responsibility than in raising children, because that's like when we're all old and fucked up, that's who runs shit. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
besides that, just preparing the child for life. These kids these days, are just not prepared for life. I mean, think about what you brought up, the student loan thing earlier. Think about the presumption of somebody who takes out a loan and says they shouldn't have to pay it back because it's not fair anymore. And maybe they're right to some degree that the loans were predatory. The degrees they were tricked into getting aren't necessarily useful, but we all had that same, we all went through this same path, right? When I got out of high school, I had to make those choices myself as well. And I don't get to, just go back and get assistance for my bad choices. But the issue is that we just didn't teach people to make good decisions.
Yeah.
And I think one of your other points was really interesting. You talked about, and I've seen this as well with kids, kids of friends, and my ex's kid. Just the constantly being on the screens interrupts their ability to have genuine social interactions with people. Like that, you get super anxious. One, because you're not used to having those conversations. People are temperamental because they want everything right now and they want it to be what they want. I've spent all this time curating exactly what I want to see, and I'm getting it right now all the time. That's not a good that's not a good habit to be in, right?
No, it's horrible, horrible.
So one of the other things that's happening, and I think maybe you may notice this with some of your kids' friends and stuff. I don't know yet, because you can probably see the difference between him and some of these other kids, but the way our memory works, like now we can just look stuff up whenever we feel like it. So we know a lot more, but we don't understand anything. You know what I mean? Like remember when you had to remember every phone number that was important? Otherwise, you just couldn't get in contact with people. That's not a thing anymore.
I don't even know my wife's cell phone number.
Yeah, I don't either. I have no idea what anybody's phone number is. I literally only know my own phone number now, which is completely fucking useless, except for just to tell it to people. So the way our memories, the way our brains operate, the way our memories operate are completely fucked now.
Yeah. Everything definitely has changed. Like you said, now with the whole AI and you can look up anything, you don't have to do homework anymore. You have to it's crazy. Yeah. We used to have to memorize everything. And now you don't have to memorize anything. Everything is there, one click away. Oh, what's this? Hold on, let me Google it. Hey, what's this? Let me Google it. You have so much. So everything is so easily accessible that, number one, you're not only basically eliminating your brain power, but you're also probably eliminating your wallet too, because since everything is so accessible, I don't know about you, but I feel like if I had to get batteries or something, I'd be like, oh shit, I got to get up and go to CVS and go get them. I'm like, I'll get them another day. Now I'm like, batteries, order. Shows up my door. Everything is just so easy that between that and then the what is it? You can fast food. You can get Uber Eats, McDonald's. What? How much faster do you need life to be?
Yeah,
it's wild.
And there's always. We grew up with this idea that parents' job is to make their kids' lives better than their lives were, and I think that's good, right? You want your children to progress. You want them to be at a higher station, I guess. But we made some pretty critical errors there. We thought things being easier and safer meant they were better intrinsically, and it's very clearly not true that that's the case, right?
No.
And now there's a new wave of this bullshit coming in now with Ozempic and shit. Everybody's gonna stop working out entirely and start injecting shit into their bodies so they don't get fat. You can just literally. This is what our research shows: 11 minutes a day. That's all you have to work out to be healthy and just not eat bullshit food. That's literally it's so minimal, but there's always a trade-off, right? We don't want to be inconvenienced. We don't want to be in any kind of pain at all. And look at what's happened from that. The pain thing led to an opioid epidemic in this country. People didn't want to feel any pain at all. When I was a child, and you go get your wisdom teeth taken out or something, they give you 4 ibuprofen and tell you to get fucked. You know what I mean? And then for a long period of time between the late 90s, I guess, and about 3 or 4 years ago, they would just give you a script for 30 Percocet because you got some teeth removed or something like that.
Yeah.
It's what the hell is going on here? But there's...
Well, that's the... sorry to interrupt. So what you were saying with that is what's funny is that there's a whole generation of people out there who are seeking pain. Like that's why the Spartan races and all that stuff have thousands and thousands of people doing it, because yeah, our brains were designed to want to get into that, into the suck, and thrive in that. And that's why also these cold water therapy is skyrocketing through the roof, is because people need that they have to be put in a tough spot. They have to be put into pain in order to appreciate and get that euphoric, or what's the dopamine
Mm.
hit of like, ah. I mean, this day and age, we don't carry anything. We don't carry our luggages. We don't carry our backpacks. Everything's on wheels. We roll our trash cans to this corner. Uh, we live in such a like, no one walks anywhere unless you live in like New York City,
Mm.
and it's crazy. You go to Europe and everyone's walking everyone and walking everywhere. Every people carry things. You see these 90-year-old grandmothers walking up an incline hill with her 15 groceries, and I'm there with like a backpack, huffing and puffing. She passes right by. Like it's we I think what happens is we wanted things to get easier so fast that we forgot that our body requires a little bit of suck in order to appreciate things better. So, yeah, having a super comfortable couch makes you sit down and watch more TV.
Mm.
Having the ability to Uber Eats any type of food, now you don't walk there, you don't drive there. Like I was the first person that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would drive to my neighbor's house. Like now I make it a point where I get up in the morning and I'm like, oh, I need fruit. I'm gonna go walk a mile or two to the fruit stand and come back. I'm gonna, I started taking my son. Now we walk outside. We walk, because that's what we were meant to do, and that actually is what makes me feel so much better and keeps me healthy. But yeah, we definitely got into way too easy of a world where everything is at our fingertips, and yeah, we just, like you say, we're numb.
Yeah.
It's either painkillers or opioids or something, and we've killed out our whole mentalities.
Yeah. And I mean, so it's pervasive. It's in this point is true in every part of your life. If you take shortcuts, you're gonna get places, but not where you want to go. You know what I mean? And then it's the vacuum that happens in that gap between effort and consequence that is the real problem. And think about it from a pain perspective. You either don't do stuff that causes you pain, whether it's mental or physical pain, and you suffer the consequences of that: sedentary lifestyle or social awkwardness, or you do experience the pain but you don't want to, so you get addicted to drugs, or you don't want to take the responsibilities around you in your community, so you end up with shitty fucking politician leaders. And
Yeah.
at the broader scale, at the national scale, which is true in Cuba, it's true to some degree here as well, you find yourself trapped under some form of authoritarianism. I mean, do you think when everybody's going about their business and minding their own business, do you think it's good people who are like, what I should do is go control what that guy's doing? You know what I mean? That's not a good person that thinks that way. That's an asshole.
No.
That's an insecure authoritarian that's thinking that way. And the only way to inoculate society against that is for you to take part in your own governance. Plato said this 2,000 goddamn years ago. If you do not participate in your own governance, you are doomed to be ruled by fools. Right? This is wisdom that we've had for a very, very long time.
Yeah. Yeah. That was actually something I read. It popped up on something the other day, and it said something like, based off of kind of what's going on these days. It's like, listen, if you want to think a certain way in the privacy of your own home, that's all up to you, and that's great, and do whatever you want. But I don't have to think like that. And it's like, where it becomes a problem is where you want me to think what you want to do has to be your way, like my way of thinking. That's where it becomes a problem. And that's, I think, what we're living in today. If you see all this stuff going on with the government, or either Republican or Democrat, or the just lies across the board, or transgender or race, all that crap, like, you want to think like that? go right ahead, but don't shove it down my throat.
Mm.
If I don't think the same way you do, like I believe there's two genders. That's all I believe, and you're not going to change it always. I don't believe men can have babies. Like, and because I don't think like that, I have to tread lightly on my social media or what I say because if I say something to trigger someone and they cancel me or they shut down my account, my whole livelihood, my whole business is basically gone because I have to like tiptoe around that kind of stuff. And to me, that's what drives me the most crazy is that I have so much to say, and like because I'm so angry that this stuff is being shoved down, like I'm being told how to think, and that was one of my reasons why I became an artist. Is that like I don't do well with rules. Like, listen, I'm not, I abide by the Ten Commandments. I don't murder this. I don't, have affairs, things like that. Like, but that's those are my guidelines. Everything else, I should be able to think how I want to think. And perfect example. Let's say art. You go to an art school or an art class. Let's say you paint outside the lines as a kid. You get an F in her class because you want to paint outside the line.
Mm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, even things like that should be art, or freedom of speech, or anything along those lines. You should be able to speak or paint or talk about what you want. And there's a lot of times where I get so frustrated that I literally want to paint a middle finger and title it like, fuck you all, like stop. But if I do, then there's a possibility that 1% or more of a percentage of my, let's say, people who follow my work might be like, well, fuck this guy. So then now I can't feed my son because these people are butthurt that I don't think the same way they do. So I literally have to like go about just talking with people like yourself or like-minded people, and we can come up with this like conclusions of what can we do to maybe help my own son or my family, because I can't go out there into the public and be like, this is how I think, because people get all pissed off. And then, like I said, if I'm going to affect what feeds my family, I have to kind of, I can push, but I can't push too much, especially in the world we live in today, which is sad.
Mm.
As an artist, I should be able to speak my mind, do whatever I want. And you think about it, it's like, you look at Pablo Picasso, one of the most, like, for example, look at all these sculptures and artists that all got canceled over the last, I don't know, 2 years, and statues being thrown down. And then you look at people like Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso was a communist.
Yeah.
He was part of the Communist Party. Like, he was there helping with like Nazis. It just, how is he okay? His art sells for millions of dollars. No one has an issue with that.
Yeah, you can still buy Che Guevara shirts even though he executed gay people on a regular basis, and that seems to be completely lost on the leftists. That's bizarre. It's very bizarre.
So it's so wild. It's so wild how there's no right way to think. I mean, you just worry about yourself. Like I said, you got your declaration of, you got your U.S. laws, and then you got your biblical laws or whatever you believe in, and there's certain ways to live. Live by those, great. And you want to do your thing, great. You want to be a dude and be a girl or whatever you want it is, great, do your thing. But like shoving it down people's throat like Bud Light, Budweiser try to do, those type of things are fucking up our society so much that I literally I'm building a house right now, and I have one TV in the entire house is where I'm putting a cable box. I'm even thinking about just putting up artwork there and just taking my TV off because it's insane. Like, if you're on social media and your TV and you watch like news, you come out of there like, where the fuck did we go wrong?
Yeah, there's a comedian, Bill Hicks, back in the day used to do a joke about that. He's like, if you turn on television, it's just war, famine, death, AIDS, war, famine, death, AIDS. And you walk outside and it's like, oh, the sun's up, it's crickets chirping. I don't know what the fuck everybody's talking about. You know what I mean? Not that there aren't bad things that happen, but we do seem to seek out that negativity for some reason. Now you've over the past couple of years, a lot of LA people have moved to Miami. I know that's true because I have some friends who have, and a lot of LA people have also moved to where I live, which is Austin. The difference is all those LA people moved to Miami, and then in the last election in November of last year, Miami went red Republican for the first time as long as I've been alive. I think shit. I don't remember the last time Miami voted Republican, which is
Yeah.
really it's really interesting. Um, and you've been there your whole life. Have you noticed any sort of change around there? I mean, well, is it some? I hear anecdotally that it is the like Cuban community in particular who have stepped up and gotten tired of all this woke
Yeah.
bullshit that's going on, and that was a big part of it. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, what I would say is that in Miami, as far as, lifestyle and culture, it seems the same. You just have a lot more New Yorkers and Californians who
Mm,
moved here. And it seems like those are the ones who moved here was for a specific reason, and it was to get away from the chaos in other places.
yeah.
But myself, along with all my friends who are locals and live here, the first thing we do when we meet like New Yorkers or LA, or we tell them, hey, listen, don't bring your problems over here. We voted a specific way over here. What the way you voted before over there didn't work for you, so don't switch our thing. But I think what we're having is that there is a giant Latino population here now, and it's growing and growing, and a lot of them are Cubans who they already saw this happen once, and that's why when Bernie Sanders attempted his run, they were like, fuck no, because that was about the closest thing you can do to, basically Fidel Castro.
Mm,
And I think they're had enough, and it's like they live here now. Things are going well. We got low taxes. Everything is great. Businesses are thriving. Everyone and their mother wants to move here. Businesses are booming. The city is booming. Economics, everything. It's like, why ruin that? Why try to bring it back to technically almost like the damn Stone Age?
mm,
Like if you look at what's going on, like look at the other day in Chicago and the chaos that's happening in California. It's like, and then you have all the celebrities that are living there promoting those type of way of life, and it's like, yeah, you do that because you get your check no matter what. You're getting your millions of dollars to making your woke movies and all that stuff. But the people here, oh no 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 no! You should see like all the stores here, the beer, all that. No one's drinking Bud Light, no one's drinking Budweiser. It's you can see it. Like people here really are, I think, have been inspired or have seen what happened in Cuba, and having a guy like Ron DeSantis who fought for us, and we saw it. I think one of the biggest things we saw it during COVID. We saw that, like, I was the first person that thought that the president runs the country.
mm.
I didn't realize that each governor basically can give you the middle finger to the president and say, nope, we're doing it our way. And I think that's when a lot of people got their eyes open during COVID. Like, this state's free. Everyone's running around like nothing's going on. All the boats, like everyone was having boat parties. Everyone was on kayaks. Like I was the first one paddleboarding to this island, a party over there. Like everyone was having a grand old time, and they realized like, okay, maybe it's a little bit more than just left or right. I think it has to do now with just freedom of
Mm.
speech, and I think that people got a taste for the first time ever of what people felt like in Cuba or in some of these countries, and they're like, I don't want that. So we're going to Florida, and what I've seen is that yeah, a lot of people that did move here, they're all about just keeping it free, moving their businesses here for tax reasons, for just a better lifestyle. It's sunny, it's summer year round, like you can't really beat it. And as an artist, like I used to have a couple of friends that they were always telling me, Alex, you got to move out of Miami. You got to move out of Miami. You got to move to New York. You got to move to California. And now I'm looking at it, and you've got all these like huge corporations. You got like Citadel moving, I think,
Mhm.
100,000 of their employees over here, donating. I think they just donated $100 million to the high school I went to hold spots for all their kids. Like, so it's like all these guys that, let's say I would move to New York to go sell art to, are all moving back to my state. So my whole focus is now, let me just be the Miami artist.
Mm.
I don't need to be international. I'll stick to Miami.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so
Um,
speaking of the art, you mentioned before you did some of the stuff you do is charitable with your art. Can you describe that? So, yeah.
So when I started to grow my following and really be as respected as an artist, the first thing I thought to myself was, when I was a kid in middle school, I got thrown out of my classrooms all the time. I literally lived outside the door on my own world. And they didn't have cell phones then. So I literally sat outside there, and I just sat and literally stared at the floor. So my basic math and basic grammar for a very long time was horrible. Horrible because I never learned anything because the teachers didn't know how to teach because when I was in middle school, you know, learning disabilities and things like that really didn't exist. They didn't even know, teachers didn't know what the hell to do with kids like that.
Mm.
So if I didn't know what was going on, where would I go? I would go into my comfort area, which is I would doodle in my books. So as I started to grow a name for myself, I had all these schools starting to reach out to me and ask me, "Hey, would you speak at our school, or would you speak at career day?" And I'm the first one saying, "Look, I'll speak, but you're not gonna like it." And they're like, "Ha ha ha ha!" And I would go there and I'd be like, "Listen, kids, do if you want to be art, you want to do this, like you can't really listen to your teachers too much. Teachers will know so much, and that whole theory of those who can't teach applies to a lot of people. Not saying all teachers. I think teachers are great. I think there's a lot of people who are very good at teaching, but there's a lot of others that they're so one-track mind, and that's why my middle school experience was horrible because these teachers they didn't know what to do with me. Instead of trying to work with me, the best thing to do was kick me out of the classroom because I was the distraction for the kids who wanted to learn. And I don't want that to happen to anyone else because there's a painting I did. It says, I'm not dumb. You just don't get me." And so I made it a point to really focus on kids and giving back to kids and talking about how art, like for example, a lot of you go to these underprivileged areas and, the first mentality is, I want to be a basketball player. I want to be a football player to kind of get out the ghetto. And and I would go there and be like, "Look, I played all these different sports and art is what saved my life. Art got me out of the scenes that I was at. Art, gave me a business and art gave me the ability to talk to others and people actually want to listen at what came out of my mouth." So I made it a huge point to, because I can't go across the whole spectrum. So I focus on kids. So I'm constantly working with orphanages, constantly doing murals where like I do an outline and I have, these inner city kids come and paint with me. And while we're drawing, we're talking about life, and I'm talking about, they're talking about their families and I tell them, "Look, though I've had this and maybe I've had a little bit of privilege, if you want to call it that, no one handed me my art career. No one I worked really hard for that. Like galleries didn't want to work with me. They shit all over me. They were like, "Oh, this art schools I tried to get into," and they were like, "No, you're not ready." And everyone there's tons of people. Even my father was the first one to be like, "Alex, you got to focus on a real business. Art isn't a real career." And now he gets stopped on the street all the time. "Oh, you're Alex's dad," and he's super proud of that. So like. I tell these kids, like, "Look, if you want something bad enough, whether you want to be a poet, you want to be a singer, you want to be a rapper, you want to be the guy who moves the knobs behind in the production, like for, producer for music or whatever the case may be, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. Anyone, your parents, your government, your schools, your teachers, do what brings you joy in your life. Even if it doesn't make you money, it will, and the other end, it'll make you happy. And in turn, for some odd reason, whenever you do what you really love, for some reason, you don't really have to worry about how to put food on your table because it kind of just goes hand in hand. You work really, really hard at something you love, suddenly money comes from it, whether it be sponsors or this or people buying your art or whatever the case may be. People want to be around people who are positive and chase their dreams, and that attracts other like-minded people, and then you can grow together. And that's how I took my art and my voice and used it to kind of help those and give back. Because I didn't want to be a guy who was like, "Oh my God, yeah, I made millions of dollars selling art, but I don't give a shit about my community. I only worry about myself. I stay in my own little space and I do my thing and I flaunt everything I have." If you look at my social media, you can't tell when I drive. You don't know where I live. You don't see what watch I have on my wrist. You don't see any of that because to me, that's not important. I focus on showing moments, experiences, paddleboarding across countries to fundraise, doing an Ironman to help, Sebastian Strong, with the kids for pediatric cancer research. I started my own foundation called Pediatric Angel Foundation, where we help, kids in inner city. We help them with, swimming classes. We help them with just giving back to always just giving back to the community. And I've always wanted to be where like I heard this David Goggins thing where he said like when I get to heaven, I want God to look at the list and be like, damn, you did way more than I thought or I had for you. And that's how I want to kind of live my life is that like use what I have for good and in turn affect people's lives that when I'm dead and gone, people will be talking about me like this guy stepped up to the plate. This guy didn't work with galleries because they kind of shit on him and he made a name for himself. He did, he gave back to his community. He helped. He, left his mark on the city of Miami. Like, those are all things that I want to have people when they talk about me, they say this. Not he was super selfish. He was into himself. He never focused on his family. He was always in his phone and he was always talking shit and bashing people online. Like, I don't want to be that. And that's what a lot of society is today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good message. And the more it's interesting. We all think that it's easy, as broad as society is, as big as some of our problems are, to think that they're unsolvable. And the truth is, the reality is you as an individual, you're not gonna solve hunger, right? Like you as a single person aren't gonna solve hunger, but you can look at a hungry person and solve that motherfucker's hunger right now. And if enough people do that, then things do begin to change. So I appreciate that message, and I'm glad you're out there delivering it to people and especially to children. Before we get out of here, let everybody know where they can find you on social media so they can check out your art, check out your charitable stuff.
So you can go either to my website, which is mijares.com, mijares.com, and then my social media, everything is at Mijares, which is at mijares.com. So on Facebook, Instagram. Instagram is my main platform. That's where I do everything from there, and that's where I talk about shows and philanthropy and everything that I'm doing.
Cool, man. Well, look, really appreciate you coming today. It's been a great conversation.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I like
anytime.
what you guys are doing.
Yeah, man. We'll do it again sometime soon. And thank you all for watching. This has been Citizen.